Order number 19, the Social Protection Bill, National Assembly Bills number 12 of 2025, second reading.
Senator Majority Leader.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Social Protection Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2025 be now read a second time. I've had the distinct honor of moving important bills in this House, Mr. Speaker, but from a person that is socially conscious of the needs of vulnerable people in our society, Mr. Speaker, I would say this is perhaps the most important. Mr. Speaker, in our country, we have various forms of social protection measures that we give out. Unfortunately, due to lack of proper organization by successive administration, we have a one-size-fits-all approach to social interventions across our country. And there are many conversations that are lost because our needy people, Mr. Speaker, don't have somebody to speak out for them. In fact, on many occasions, Mr. Speaker, the conversations on social interventions is left to the elite here in Nairobi, who can speak, Mr. Speaker, on these particular issues, who are, Mr. Speaker, articulate, have representations, Mr. Speaker, and nobody speaks for the needy. In fact, I want to challenge you, colleague senators. I'm just laying the basis, Mr. Speaker, before I move this bill, that you must take your legislative responsibility more seriously, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that you speak for the people that sent you here. Senator Eddie, my good friend, you are not sent here by very well-to-do people. I know the people of Migori. They're just as much like the people of Kericho that I represent. They are standing on the wealth radar of the country is almost average, Mr. Speaker. And there are many things that we do as a country, Mr. Speaker. Forget about, I'll come to the social intervention programs, what we send to persons with disability, Mr. Speaker, to the social support program to those citizens that are 70-year plus. If you go to your county, Senator Beatrice Akinyi, and ask in a public gathering in Homa Bay, where you come from, you'll find that there's a 70-year-old who is in the safety net and they are being supported. Then you'll find another one who isn't, with no clearly defined process upon which this exercise is done. There's a lack of specific focus on this special category of Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. There's even a very live conversation. This is the wrong time to have it, but we need to have this conversation as a country, Mr. Speaker. This issue of zero rating of bread and milk. How many of your constituents, Eddie, buy milk and bread from shops and supermarket? 99, if not nearly 100% of the people that you represent in this parliament, Senator Eddie, they wake up to take milk with guashe, nduma, or even without any quote-unquote accompaniment, if that is what your people call it. Yet many times when you have a conversation about the cost of bread, it is made to appear as if it's a national problem. Yet the Kenyans that actually consume bread on their breakfast, Mr. Speaker, they don't form the larger population. 99% of the people that many of us that come from the rural counties represent in this House, Mr. Speaker, that is not part and parcel of their basic requirements. Yet we are told that it needs to be zero rated because it's the food of the poor, Mr. Speaker, and therefore my constituents who are very poor, Mr. Speaker, they do their share in paying the tax burden on the country, but then that same tax that has been deducted out of them is used to shoulder the burden of those who enjoy bread and milk. Even if you are to move it to Nairobi, for example, and our cities, Mombasa, Nakuru, Eldoret, and the bigger cities, Mr. Speaker, what Kenya has not been able to successfully do is to stratify the locations and the areas through which those that need to benefit from social interventions from the government and support, Mr. Speaker, live and are able to access these services. Why should I, who live in a fairly affluent neighborhood, want to buy because the justification, if you read why, for example, bread and milk, Mr. Speaker, is subsidized at the same price with people who come from our informal settlements, Mr. Speaker. If it's a subsidy of some sort to help the urban poor, and that shouldn't be a problem, because we must be a society that appreciates that people are not at the same place in terms of their spending ability, Mr. Speaker. Is it not possible to classify so that those that benefit from these social interventions, Mr. Speaker, are targeted, and therefore we don't burden the entire country benefiting people who don't necessarily need it? Take the example even of the issue that we had a few weeks ago, examination fee. There was a big headline. President William Ruto has stopped payment of exam fee for students. And I dug deeper to begin to try and understand what exactly is the conversation. Mr. Speaker, you know the problem, the unfortunate thing with our newspapers, the editors, people that speak in the media, Mr. Speaker, is that we see every government policy decision through the prism of politics. And it's so fashionable, Mr. Speaker, to critique governments of the day, successive administration, but more specifically the current one, Mr. Speaker, for reasons that you and I know, but they're not very far from the reasons of what you said yesterday, Mr. Speaker, when you were interrogating the matter that was before us on this House, Mr. Speaker. And I was mentioning the example of payment of examination fee, and why, even as we try to shoulder the burden of parents that cannot afford to pay examination fee for their students, Mr. Speaker, is it not a given fact that there are those that can afford? And therefore there must be a basic understanding of how you separate those who can afford and those who can't afford, Mr. Speaker, so that you don't end up running a near socialist republic, because that's what we are nearly becoming. Every other policy nowadays, we are told, no. Free primary education was introduced, free this was introduced, without ever reverting back to ask ourselves, who is paying for all these free things that we want to enjoy in this country, Mr. Speaker? We are told, oh, these ones are demonstrating. They need a salary increment. Yeah, let's pay them. Another load shows up. There's a disconnect between our financial sense, Mr. Speaker, and the realities of the country that we live in. We are actually a country that is penny-wise but pound-foolish, Mr. Speaker. We believe that it is possible to ignore the cents, but they believe that the shillings, Mr. Speaker, will make sense. It's not possible from an economic perspective. And we must begin to think and reflect back, Mr. Speaker, on what is a proper way of rolling out our social intervention programs, Mr. Speaker. So that when we do interventions in the exam sector, we can have a conversation and say, those that go to public primary schools, for example, you are almost certain that anybody in this day and age who allows their children to go to public primary schools, Mr. Speaker, indeed need government support. But those that go to certain section, a certain categorization of schools and certain academies, Mr. Speaker, can do either with a full subsidy, with a half a subsidy, Mr. Speaker, or no subsidy at all, Mr. Speaker. And their parents will be okay to go about it. But we should not undermine the millions of other children who can benefit from these programs, Mr. Speaker, simply based on the fact that it's not economically viable to make some of these programs. And therefore, I was just laying the basis for us to appreciate that as a country, a time has come for us to have and be under the full realization that it is not possible to have a one-size-fits-all proposal on various social intervention programs, Mr. Speaker, and believe that things will definitely be okay. On to the specifics of this bill, Mr. Speaker, that this bill actually seeks to provide a framework for the administration of non-contributory social protection interventions in Kenya and establish the National Board for Social Protection. Create a comprehensive legal framework to guide implementation of social protection programs that support vulnerable individuals and households, Mr. Speaker. At least we have been able to map out the households. Through the Kenya National Population Survey of 2019 and the previous years, Mr. Speaker, you are able to tell what is the number of households that are in our counties. That's the data that we use for guiding, Mr. Speaker, policy decisions, just like the formula we've just passed. And therefore, this board that we are creating, Mr. Speaker, is to advise and to guide and to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that these programs are not run blindly. I had said previously in this House, Senator Cherargei, if you recall, that I will not move any other government bill that creates another board. But remember the specific nature of this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, that I said it must make sense. But I hope, Mr. Speaker, that later when we go to third reading, we can put in the transition clause what are the bodies, government entities that do these social interventions, Mr. Speaker, which must be wound up as a result of the creation of this board, so that we don't end up with hundreds of boards, Mr. Speaker, that duplicate their roles. We are trying to reduce actually the cost of running government, Mr. Speaker, and that cannot be achieved if we continue to have many boards, Mr. Speaker. But I have said that we need to make special exception for boards such as this, and I have laid the basis why this is extremely important, Mr. Speaker, to be in a country where social intervention programs, Mr. Speaker, are not rolled out in the form and the manner that they are rolled out. I believe, and it is my understanding, that when you create this particular board, Mr. Speaker, they are able to interact with Ministry of Education and ask them, what are these cost and payment structures? What are the support and capitation that you send to the public institutions that exist in this country, Mr. Speaker? And how do you measure so that you don't end up in a situation where you believe that it is possible to standardize and you pay for the entire country, Mr. Speaker? We must appreciate that we are not an oil-rich nation, Mr. Speaker, that we have almost run out of fiscal headroom to either borrow or tax Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. Yet the cost of running government continues to increase. And you can see the kind of headlines that we have, where people believe that it is possible to continue, Mr. Speaker, paying and meeting every bill from health, Mr. Speaker, to education, Mr. Speaker, to all these other things without some level of measure. And it is the creation of boards such as this, Mr. Speaker, that needs to be needs specific and ensure that we give. Additionally, this bill seeks to cushion persons in need against risks and contingencies, build human capital capabilities and resilience among those in need, promote the overall well-being of vulnerable persons. We know, Mr. Speaker, that one of the biggest signature successes of this administration, you know, we live in a country where when a government does right, Mr. Speaker, it is nothing. But wait until something goes wrong somewhere, then it makes headlines. One of the boldest decisions that President William Ruto took upon taking on the reins of power is the intervention on government policy on those that are in the social support program, the vulnerable and the elderly, Mr. Speaker, that actually they are paid before civil servants are paid. Previously, if you recall, in previous administration, sometimes they'd wait for 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 months before, Mr. Speaker, paying or getting their contribution. As it is today, Mr. Speaker, I saw the statement tabled here last week. It's part of the documents that I table here every other day. Month-on-month payment to the vulnerable. But we need to ensure that the amount that is being sent to them, Mr. Speaker, is enough to meet their basic needs, and all people that meet the criteria, Mr. Speaker, for being vulnerable people that needs to be supported end up actually benefiting. And that is part and parcel of that. Social protection, Mr. Speaker, is essential to address poverty and all those things, and I have mentioned, Mr. Speaker. Specifically under Part 1 and Clauses 1 to 6, Mr. Speaker, are general terms. Clause 7 to 27 provide for this particular board that I have mentioned and functions of the board, which include the cabinet secretary relating to social protection, designing and implementation. Mr. Speaker, I would like also to highlight the roles of county governments in social contained in the bill. Mr. Speaker, county governments will be responsible for implementing national government policies through county-specific legislation, what I had mentioned earlier. The specific needs of a certain category of people in Homa Bay may not necessarily be the same as those in Kericho, as those in Nyandarua, in Garissa, where you come from, Mr. Speaker, and all these other counties. Counties also will develop the interoperable county registries for social protection beneficiaries, ensuring that you can countermatch actually what the national government has and what the county government has. Remember, we passed in this House, Senator Cherargei, last term, the county statistics bill, because we said it's not just important to use the, what is it called, national statistics, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Even our counties need to develop capacity to develop their own statistics, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, part 4 and 5, Mr. Speaker, are just the various offenses, Mr. Speaker. Section clause 49 to 56 provide for repeal of Social Assistance Act, transition of staff, the things I was talking about earlier. With those very many remarks, I beg to move, Mr. Speaker, and request the Senator Senator Beatrice Ogola, Mr. Speaker, to second, because faced with a choice between two young men that are hot-blooded and a lovely mother like Senator Beatrice, Mr. Speaker, I choose Senator Beatrice to second this bill. They will contribute.
Senator Beatrice.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, the Majority Leader and a Senator of my choice, for granting me the opportunity to second this bill, the Social Protection Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2025. Leader, I happen to resonate so well with the ideals that you have just explained here. Sometimes back when I was a young woman, but growing into leadership, and at the time of the Ground Coalition then, you must have been in school, and Senator Cherargei and Eddie was still elsewhere that we might not mention today. I happened to have been growing up in Homa Bay district then as a young woman leader. And I happened to have been chosen by the DDC then to sit at the policy-making body nationally at the initial social protection that dealt with the coming up of the elderly cash transfer form. And that is why I'm excited, and I will be willing to really support, to second and support. But Honorable Speaker, even then, when we started with the elderly cash transfer, Honorable Speaker, before the orphan and children cash transfer came, I would like to relate a story that has worked well for this country. That in the initial time, I remember 2 areas were picked for obvious reasons, and that was Nyeri and Bondo. And then the president was from Nyeri, and the other prime minister was from Bondo. And those 2 areas were picked as pilots. Honorable Speaker, I want to say this has been a success story in this country. At the implementation time then, they began by paying out cash of 2,000 shillings to the identified elderly people then. And Honorable Speaker, you should have seen the state in which those old elderly people were. Apart from the fact that they were aged, Honorable Speaker, a number of them were also sick. And when they were brought to pick the initial 2,000 shillings, which was paid in cash, they were brought like they were being taken to an hospital, Honorable Speaker. You should then have seen the success story and the success pictures after the initial reception of the 2,000 shillings. Honorable Speaker, a number of these elderly people were people who even were taking care of orphans, apart from the fact that they were elderly. And this tremendously transformed their lives. Initially, Honorable Speaker, support was given in terms of kind. The government would provide maize and beans in terms of support to such people. But an idea came that people needed to live in dignity. That even though they were elderly, they needed to decide what they wanted to do with themselves. You do not need to prescribe for somebody what they are going to eat in terms of maize and beans. And so with the provision of the 2,000 shillings, they were able to plan for what they needed, Honorable Speaker. Where you needed some rice, Honorable Speaker, I would need some fish, or just buy soap for my family. A number of those elderly people even used this little money that we thought was so little to pay school fees for some of the orphans that they were staying with. And Honorable Speaker, I can stand here and give evidence of such elderly people that ended up paying fee even with the little they have, apart from the subsistence of taking care of themselves. And so I stand here to say that this initial initiative that has continued to expand, and now there are so many in number, is a real success story in this case. And finally, Madam Speaker, in consequent months, when these elderly people were paid, a number of us asked ourselves whether they were still the elderly we saw initially at the commencement of this project, because now there were people who had lives into themselves. They looked happier. They looked like people who were living now in a dignified way, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we live in an African setup in a community, and we cannot lose our brotherhood, Madam Speaker. We must be a people in terms of leadership or in terms of families who care about the vulnerable, Madam Speaker. And it is on those bases that I rise to second and support this bill. But Madam Speaker, allow me to give out certain key thoughts from myself on the Social Protection Bill, the National Assembly Bills number 12 of 2025. Madam Speaker, even as we talk about the elderly, there have also been commendable programs by the government on the orphans and vulnerable children, which closely followed after the elderly cash transfer that was initiated at the time of the Grand Coalition government. But key, Madam Speaker, are seriously vulnerable cohorts in our society, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to single out key cohorts. As a community, as a country, we must pay attention when we talk about social protection to certain calibers of people in amongst ourselves. Madam Speaker, do we ever even think about college and university students out there? And Madam Speaker, I'm not talking about their tuition money. I'm talking about certain support that I see that is very lacking. The government must be certainly is giving some support. But Madam Speaker, I want to talk from a personal experience I've had with a number of students that we relate with. And I know all the leaders here and elsewhere relate with them. Madam Speaker, it breaks my heart when I see some of the life that university and college students live in a number of our institutions. Just recently, Madam Speaker, I happened to just realize that there are some students in our universities and colleges that because they are not able to pay rent, even when fees has been paid, they are not able to pay food, Madam Speaker. They live in very miserable situations. And Madam Speaker, the basis of this bill that I support is banked on the fact that people need to live with dignity, Madam Speaker. A child or a young person or anybody who lives and grows in dignity grows to be a very strong personality, Madam Speaker. People who are confident of themselves, and that is what this nation needs. I'm happy that this bill, the main objects is about cushioning some of these people in their livelihoods. It is about helping people to grow well, Madam Speaker. It is about promoting equality, promoting quality life, and promoting equity, Madam Speaker. And there, Madam Speaker, I'm talking about social justice amongst everybody else, and especially as a Kenyan. Madam Speaker, I've talked about these college students and universities. As we as a country, we must think about those cohorts. And as I've said, even though the government and people, guardians might provide for fee, there are specific students that are languishing in poverty in our colleges. And what as a nation are we doing about them? Can't we have a mechanism in which we can pick out some of these students so that they grow in their professions, but they grow not languishing in poverty so much so that their egos are affected? Madam Speaker, the other reason why I want to support this bill is that there's another cohort in our society. The mover of the bill has talked about the urban poor. But Madam Speaker, I want to expound on that. I live next to a sub-county headquarters, a peri-urban place, Madam Speaker, in a town head of my constituency called Ndewa Town. Madam Speaker, as these urban areas spring, and as a number of people move to some of these urban centers, they come with a lot of people that are coming to look for jobs, a number of people that are coming to look for their livelihoods. But at the end of it, they are not able to get. And most of the time, Madam Speaker, I cry for a number of women because I meet them each time I go home. A number of women, especially, who come to live in the urban centers in search of some work, in search of some livelihood. And because these jobs are not forthcoming, Madam Speaker, they join the growing population of the urban poor. As we talk about this social protection bill, as a country, we must be thinking about that cohort. Madam Speaker, I've often related a story where in this same city, I came face to face with a number of some young girls who had come to work somewhere that I had visited, just on this daily cause of just cleaning houses. And it pained my heart and broke my heart, Madam Speaker, on that particular day, that when their host decided to serve them with a cup of tea, and later after they finished that work, which they were doing, Madam Speaker, they were served with a plate of lunch. Madam Speaker, these women were hesitant to eat that food because their main reason is that they would not take breakfast in this house and take lunch. Madam Speaker, they opted to keep this food so that they would take it home to their children. And that should tell us that in this country, there's a cohort of people that we must pay attention to, Madam Speaker. And it is on this basis that I want to second this bill and to emphasize that this board that will finally be put in place, Madam Speaker, must widen their scope and identify the different cohorts of people that we need to take care of as a country. Madam Speaker, the other group that comes to my mind in the communities that we live in is that we have all over parents, they may be single or just parents, who are terminally ill, are bedridden, Madam Speaker. But even in their state of being bedridden, Madam Speaker, some of them have young children that they have to look for that cannot look for themselves. Same state, I often encounter this group of people when I'm in my village, in my home. And when you walk around, you find mothers that are terminally ill, but, Madam Speaker, they still have children. And these children cannot fend for themselves. Madam Speaker, these are the groups we must focus on this Social Protection Bill, National Assembly Bill 12 of 2025. And so, Madam Speaker, I second this bill, Madam Speaker, there are also points of interest that finally support or serve these people that I've talked about. And these are our schools and hostels. Even though they are entities on their own, Madam Speaker, but these are convergent points that serve these vulnerable groups. And Madam Speaker, why do I say so? I also happen to live, as I said, in a peri-urban place, and we have schools around there, especially in the urban centers, that in some of these schools, we have children that are coming from wanting families. Some of them, as I've said, a mother might be terminally ill or a father, but you have children. Madam Speaker, you know there are children who go to school in this country, and yet they are going to learn but hungry, Madam Speaker. They have gone without food. So I support this because I expect that these are some of the entry points that must be focused on. So the Social Protection Bill, Madam Speaker, the approach that we must give it is we must give it an all-inclusive, even in terms of government structures, we must have different structures. We must have different sectors that are paying attention to this urban, to this vulnerable group. So, Madam Speaker, this is a bill that expounds ideals that I believe in, ideals that I've lived watching, ideals that will restore the dignity of a number of our people in the society. And Honorable Speaker, Madam Speaker, dignity ensures that people grow in a very, very strong way, as I've said. So, Madam Speaker, I second this bill, I support it, but Madam Speaker, one thing that I want that must be looked into is the board that has been created in this bill. I've seen we have the chairperson that will be appointed by the president. We have two permanent secretaries, principal secretaries, Madam Speaker. Those are national outfits. Madam Speaker, I've seen only one person that will be nominated by the Council of County Governors. But, Madam Speaker, we must take note that social protection cuts across all the levels of government. And in any case, Madam Speaker, all those vulnerable groups that we are talking about live in some county. And so, as I support this and as I second this bill, Madam Speaker, the constitution, the numbering or the membership of the board can be looked into, and we must bring in more representation of the counties, one or two more, but I support this, and Madam Speaker, I second this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. Honorable Senators, I propose the question.